Let's talk about a type of person most people never really notice until they feel out of place. It happens in crowded living rooms during finals, in offices on Monday mornings, in group chats that explode with scores and highlights. Everyone seems emotionally invested, shouting at screens, celebrating wins like personal achievements, mourning losses like heartbreak. And then there's you. You watch quietly, or maybe you don't watch at all. You don't feel that rush, that tribal pull, that deep attachment to teams you've never met. You try to care sometimes. You wonder if something's missing, but the truth is, your mind and emotions are wired differently, and that difference says more about your psychology than you might think. There's a very specific feeling that comes with not being obsessed with sports. It's not hatred, it's not arrogance, it's more like distance. You might sit in a room where everyone is focused on a game, and you notice something else entirely: the tension in people's faces, the way conversations shrink into statistics, the way emotions rise and fall based on something happening miles away on a field. And while others are riding a wave of excitement, you feel like you're standing on the shore, watching the water move. This doesn't mean you can't enjoy a game. You might appreciate the skill, the strategy, the beauty of movement, but your emotional system doesn't fully attach. You don't internalize the outcome as a personal victory or defeat, and because of that, you sometimes feel like you're missing a social language everyone else speaks fluently. Psychologically, this often points to a person who doesn't form identity through collective emotional surges. Many people bond through shared highs and lows tied to external events. It creates instant connection, a sense of we. But you tend to build connection differently. You bond through conversation, through shared values, through emotional depth rather than shared spectacle. So when the room erupts over a last-minute goal, you don't feel wrong. You just feel separate, not superior, not inferior, just wired for a different kind of meaning. Sports, at their core, are about more than games. They're about belonging, colors, logos, chants. They create psychological tribes. When someone says, "we won," they're not talking about athletic participation. They're talking about emotional inclusion. If you don't obsess over sports, it often means your sense of identity isn't built through group affiliation in the same way. You don't easily merge your emotions with a collective narrative. Your individuality stays intact, even in group settings. This can make you feel like an outsider, especially in cultures where sports are a primary bonding tool. But psychologically, it often reflects a strong internal identity. You don't need a team to feel whole. You don't need a shared rivalry to feel connected to others. You might prefer one-on-one conversations over crowd energy. You might feel more alive discussing ideas, stories, or personal experiences than discussing rankings and scores. Your brain seeks meaning that feels personally relevant, not symbolically assigned. This doesn't make sports fans shallow. It just means your emotional investment system is selective. You don't attach deeply to things unless they resonate with your inner world. And a team's victory, no matter how exciting, doesn't always reach that inner space. There's another layer to this psychology that often goes unnoticed. Emotional energy is a limited resource. Some people distribute it widely into teams, celebrities, competitions, public events. Others conserve it, directing it toward close relationships, personal goals, or inner reflection. If you don't obsess over sports, you may be someone who guards emotional investment carefully. You don't want your mood dictated by something outside your control. You don't want your happiness rising and falling based on a scoreboard. So, without consciously deciding it, your mind chooses not to attach too deeply. This is common among people who value emotional stability. You may have learned, through experience, that strong emotional swings can be exhausting. So your system naturally avoids attaching to things that create intense highs and lows without personal meaning. Instead, your emotional world might be quieter, but deeper, You feel strongly about people you love, about ideas that matter to you, about experiences that shape your life directly. But distant competitions don't trigger the same response. And because of that, you sometimes watch others celebrate or grieve over sports and wonder how it feels so real to them. What you may not realize is that your emotional system isn't missing something, it's simply focused elsewhere. Here's where the quiet discomfort often begins. When you don't share a major cultural interest, people can assume things about you. They might think you're uninterested in bonding, or that you're overly serious, or that you think you're above it all. But most of the time, that's not true. You just don't connect emotionally to competitive spectacle in the same way. You might try to participate, nodding along, learning team names, asking polite questions, but inside, you feel like you're acting in a play where everyone else knows their lines naturally. This can create a subtle loneliness, not because you dislike people, but because one of the easiest social bridges doesn't quite reach you. And over time, you may drift toward friendships built on shared emotional depth rather than shared entertainment rituals. You don't avoid connection, you just seek it, where conversation replaces commentary, where stories replace statistics, where understanding replaces rivalry. And that says something important about how your mind connects to the world. Some people experience life as a series of external events, games, competitions, performances. These become emotional landmarks in their memory. They remember where they were when their team won. They remember the heartbreak of a loss, like a personal story. But if you don't obsess over sports, your most vivid memories are usually different. They're internal moments, conversations that changed you, nights you stayed up thinking about your life, times you felt deeply understood or deeply alone. Your emotional world tends to be inward-facing. You process experiences by reflecting on them, not by attaching to collective emotional waves. So while others may feel alive in a stadium crowd, you often feel most alive in quiet spaces where your thoughts have room to move. This doesn't mean you're antisocial. It means stimulation affects you differently. Loud environments filled with charged emotion can feel overwhelming rather than energizing. Your nervous system may prefer calm, depth, and psychological nuance over fast, loud bursts of excitement. Sports fandom often thrives on adrenaline and collective emotional spikes. Your psychology, however, might be wired more for meaning than momentum. One of the strongest psychological patterns in people who don't obsess over sports is the need for personal relevance. You don't easily invest emotion into things that don't directly touch your life. It's not that you lack passion, it's that your passion is selective. You care deeply, but only when something feels personally meaningful. A team winning or losing doesn't change your relationships, your growth, your inner direction. So your brain quietly categorizes it as interesting, maybe entertaining, but not emotionally essential. This same pattern often shows up in other areas of your life. You may struggle with small talk that revolves around trends or surface-level topics. You may feel detached from hype cycles, celebrity culture, or mass excitement, not because you reject them consciously, but because your emotional system is tuned to depth over spectacle. You want experiences that shape you, not just stimulate you, conversations that reveal something real, moments that shift your understanding of yourself or others. Without that layer of meaning, it's hard for your emotions to fully engage. Sports fandom is one of the most powerful examples of shared emotional identity. Entire cities feel joy or grief together. Strangers hug, crowds chant in unison. It's collective emotion at its most visible. If you don't obsess over sports, it often means you're less influenced by group emotional currents. Your feelings don't automatically sync with the crowd. You stay anchored in your own internal state. Psychologically, this can be a sign of strong emotional boundaries. You don't lose yourself easily in group energy. You observe it, understand it, maybe even appreciate it, but you don't dissolve into it. This independence can be both a strength and a source of isolation. You're less likely to be swept up in emotional extremes that don't serve you. But you might also feel like you're standing outside moments that bring others together instantly. You may have noticed this in other situations too: concerts, public celebrations, viral trends. While others merge into the collective feeling, a part of you remains aware, reflective, slightly apart. Not disconnected, just self-contained. There's a difference between feeling loudly and feeling deeply. Sports culture often rewards emotional volume cheering, shouting, dramatic reactions. It's outward, expressive, visible, but your emotional style might be quieter and more internal. You may not react intensely to a game, but you might be profoundly moved by a conversation, a piece of music, a personal story. Your emotions aren't absent, they're simply directed toward different kinds of stimuli. People who don't obsess over sports are often highly sensitive to interpersonal dynamics. You notice tone shifts, subtle emotional cues, the unspoken feelings in a room. While others track scores, you track moods. This makes you attuned to psychological complexity. You're less drawn to clear winners and losers, and more drawn to understanding what people are experiencing beneath the surface. Competition doesn't capture your attention the way connection does. Even if you don't bond over sports, you still long for belonging, but the belonging you seek is different. You're not looking to wear the same colors or chant the same slogans. You're looking for people who understand your inner world, people you can talk to without performing enthusiasm you don't feel, people who connect through shared depth, not shared distraction. Because of this, your social circle may be smaller but more emotionally intimate. You don't collect acquaintances through shared hobbies as easily. You build trust slowly through emotional safety and mutual understanding. And when you do find people who connect with you on that level, the bond often feels stronger than casual group affiliation. It's less about being on the same team and more about being seen as you truly are. There may have been moments when you questioned yourself, when everyone else seemed electrified by a match and you felt neutral, when conversations revolved around players and rankings and you had nothing to add. You might have wondered, quietly, if you were missing a part of normal human experience, if you were too detached, too serious, too different. But psychology suggests something else. It suggests that your emotional system simply prioritizes differently. You're not built to scatter your feelings widely. You're built to invest them where they carry personal meaning. And that's not emptiness, that's selectivity. For a long time, you may have believed that excitement is supposed to look a certain way: loud, visible, collective. You may have thought passion meant cheering, shouting, wearing symbols of loyalty, feeling adrenaline rise and fall with the outcome of a game. So when you didn't feel those things, you wondered if your emotional range was smaller. But your emotional life was never small. It was simply oriented in a different direction. You feel deeply when a friend opens up about something they've never told anyone. You feel alive when a conversation stretches late into the night and time disappears. You feel moved by moments that shift your understanding of life, love, or yourself. Your emotional peaks happen quietly, often without an audience, often without noise. Where others find emotional stimulation in competition, you often find it in connection, reflection, and meaning. Your system isn't designed for constant spikes of excitement. It's designed for depth that lingers. There's also a quiet stability in people who don't obsess over sports. Because you don't tie your mood to external competitions, your emotional state may be less volatile. A loss doesn't ruin your week. A win doesn't define your happiness. Your emotional center is more internally anchored. Your days are shaped more by your personal experiences, your relationships, your thoughts, your growth. This doesn't make you immune to stress or sadness, but it means your mood isn't easily controlled by events you have no influence over. Psychologically, this can be a form of emotional self-preservation. Consciously or not, you've learned to invest your feelings where they have impact, where your care can actually shape outcomes. You give your energy to conversations you can deepen, people you can support, goals you can move toward. And in a world filled with constant emotional noise, that groundedness is a quiet kind of strength. If you look closely, you might notice a pattern in what truly holds your attention. It's not spectacle, it's presence. You're drawn to moments where something real is happening between people, where someone drops their guard, where honesty replaces performance, where silence is comfortable instead of awkward. Sports are often about performance, rivalry, and symbolic victory, but your heart tends to move toward authenticity, vulnerability, and psychological truth. You're less interested in who wins and more interested in what people are feeling beneath the surface. That's why a quiet conversation can stay with you longer than the most dramatic game. Why a small moment of understanding can feel more powerful than a championship celebration. Your emotional system measures significance differently. Still, there's a tender side to this psychology. Not sharing a common cultural passion can feel isolating. You might sit in a room full of laughter and celebration and feel like you're observing rather than participating. You might smile, nod, even enjoy the atmosphere, but a part of you remains outside the emotional center of the moment. That subtle distance can create loneliness, not because you reject others, but because the bridge between you and them isn't built on the same things. You crave connection, but not through shared shouting or rivalry. You crave understanding. And sometimes, that kind of connection is harder to find. It takes longer. It requires depth that many social situations don't naturally provide. While others bond through shared emotional surges, you bond through shared meaning. You remember the friend who listened without judgment, the person who understood your silence, the conversation that made you feel less alone in your thoughts. These moments don't trend. They don't make headlines, but they shape your inner world. You don't need a crowd to feel connected. You need resonance. You need to feel that your inner experience is seen and understood. That's the arena where your emotional life truly unfolds. And when you do find people who connect in that way, the bond often feels quieter but more enduring than any shared excitement over a game. It's easy to measure yourself against what's visible in others, to think excitement should be loud, belonging should be tribal, passion should be obvious. But human psychology isn't one design. Some people feel most alive in crowds, in shared chants, in collective highs and lows. Others feel most alive in quiet understanding, in meaningful dialogue, in inner exploration. If you don't obsess over sports, it doesn't mean you lack passion, connection, or joy. It means your emotional compass points toward different sources of meaning. You are not detached from life. You are attached to it in a way that is personal, reflective, and deeply felt, even if it isn't always visible from the outside. Belonging doesn't only happen in stadiums or group chats exploding with scores. It also happens in quiet rooms, in long conversations, in moments where two people feel understood without needing to perform excitement. Your way of belonging may be softer, slower, and less obvious, but it is no less real. You were never meant to feel everything the way everyone else does. You were meant to feel the things that truly reach your inner world. And when you honor that, you stop wondering why you're different and start understanding that different doesn't mean disconnected. It just means you belong in a different way.